Hello and welcome to this presentation on VWBasic. In this tutorial, we will see the basics of programming. Well, what is programming? Programming is nothing but providing a bunch of commands to the computer and asking it to execute it for us. Typically, these commands are for things like computing some value and displaying some output. So let's start with something basic. We will ask the computer to display some value for us. The command for that is print. So I'm going to say print 100, and when I run this, you can see the output is 100. So it's basically displaying whatever I asked it to display. We can make it a little more interesting where I can say 100 plus 100. Now when I run this, you can see the output is 200. So the computer is actually adding two numbers and showing us the result. So print command allows us to display some value to the output. So this command is called the output command. Now, no matter how many times I run this application, the output is going to be the same. So it's not going to change. Say for example, I can add more commands. Say I'll make 200 and I'll make 300 here. And then when I run it, no matter how many times I run this application here, the output is going to be same. This is not very useful actually. If you look at it, this is not doing anything interesting. All it's doing is printing a bunch of values over and over again every time I run. So now let's see how we can make this program a little more useful. To make this program a little more useful, we will now introduce the concept called as variables. You can think of variables as boxes which can hold values. Let's say there is a box called as A which is going to store 10 apples, and then you have a box called as B which is going to store 20 apples. So how do we do that? So in the programming we'll say A equal to 10, B equal to 20. So here what we are basically doing is we are creating a variable called as A, and then we are storing the value 10 in it, and we are creating a variable called as B and we are storing the value 20 to it. This is basically called as an assignment operator, where we take a variable, assign the value 10 to it, and we have a variable called as B and we are assigning the value 20 to it. Similarly, we can create a variable called as C and assign the sum to it. We can say C equal to A plus B. So here what we are basically doing is we are adding A and B and storing the value in C. Now we can say print C. Now when we run this application, we get the result as 30. Again, even in this program, no matter how many times I run, we get the same result. So we have a bunch of commands that we are executing. We have variables to which we have assigned values. We are performing some mathematical operation here. We are basically asking it to add two numbers and we are outputting, but still the output is same. To make this really useful, what we can actually do is, instead of passing 10 every time to this variable, we can ask the computer to ask the end user. We basically can have a command here. We'll ask the computer to request for some value. For that, we're going to have the command called as input, and we'll give this prompt. Similarly, we'll have a command called as input. We'll command the input command basically will ask the end user, whoever is using this program, for the value for A, and then it will store it in the variable called as A. It will again ask for the value for B and it will store it in B. Now what we are basically doing is, here we are actually asking the end user for the values for A and B. We are adding that and we are printing it. Now when we run this application, now it's asking for value for A. I'm going to say 101 and say 134. Now it's actually adding these two numbers that I just entered and outputting the result. So when I run it, I can add any numbers and it will give me the result. Now this program is a lot more useful because we have the ability for the computer to prompt the end user for the data. We can perform some operation on that data and we can show the result. In this example, we are just using two variables. In real life, you can have say 20 variables, and this can be a very complicated mathematical equation which actually predicts say for example the risk of mortgages or something like that. A very complicated calculation you can do, and then you can show the result here. It can be things like interest calculations and stuff like that. So this program is very useful because it's able to ask the end user for some data, then do some useful work on the data and then show the result to the data. So this is input. We have variables and we have output, and we have some operations. So this is the typical structure of most computer programs. So the computer program will ask the end user for some data, it will do some operations on that data, and it will show the result. So this is how most computer programs are structured. So for that, you need to understand the concepts of input, variables, and output. In the next tutorial, we will get a little more deeper into variables, and we'll look at different types of variables that are there.